Coke Rap is back, man. And it's sounding better than ever, cause this new Clipse album, it's like crack. For this video, we could speedrun all the Coke references, have a giggle, call it a day, but that's kinda like fast forwarding through a gangster movie and just counting how many times they drop an F-bomb. It's fun, but it's not exactly a high-level analysis. So yes, we are going to be going through every Coke line in Let God Sort Them Out, but I also want to briefly dissect what makes each line distinct or clever, and how it relates to some of the album's overall themes. And hopefully my English teacher superpowers will allow us to scoop up every single little reference and entendre that comes our way. Guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Ray Garish. Like and subscribe if you're a fan of thoughtful hip-hop content, and a warm welcome to my regular viewers. Let's get into it. Right, first track, The Birds Don't Sing. So spoiler alert, but this song has very little to do with Coke. The track is a heart-wrenching eulogy for the duo's parents, but you wouldn't think so based on the title. Just as a rule of thumb, anytime you see the word bird anywhere near Clipse, they're probably talking about a kilogram of cocaine. Also called a chicken or a brick, you can see in the picture there that the coke is wrapped up in tape. However, in this track, Clipse subverts expectations by using the bird as a symbol of struggle, grief, and the power of their language. Referencing the title of Maya Angelou's biography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And she drew the title of her book from a poem called Sympathy by African-American poet Lawrence Dunbar. The final and most direct layer of meaning here, listening to birds singing and only hearing their cries also reflects the experience of grief, which definitely aligns with the context of the duo losing their parents within a pretty short period of time. The chorus is allegedly an interpolation of the Werner Herzog quote from Burden of Dreams, where the German director laments the impossible circumstances of trying to finish the production of his film, something that involved the mammoth task of moving a 320-ton steamship over a hill in the South American jungle, accomplished with the assistance of the native people. Wait, South American forest, native people, birds. Is the chorus of the song secretly a Coke reference? Jokes aside, this is a beautiful song. The only Coke line we have is when Malice's dad discovers bass in the cupboard. And even that is painted as a painful revelation for the father, not the usual cocaine-laced braggadocio we expect from Clipse. Okay, next song. On verse 2 of Chains and Whips, Malice comes in with a monstrous set of bars where he describes how he would dispose of his enemies. Halfway through, though, we get some Coke lines with a reference to Bubbles from the TV show The Wire, who is a drug fiend, and here he's kind of a stand-in for drug fiends generally. Malice describes how his ability to supply fiends with drugs gives him power over life and death. Like the lines between living and dying and getting high and overdosing are blurred. There's something haunting about the vagueness of it. You'll see Pusha explore this concept of having power over death in the title track, where he describes the death he breathes. There's almost this mythic, supernatural, or evil air to the power they have as drug lords. Richard in this line is a reference to the watch brand Richard Mille, and Malice distinguishes between the skeletal case of a Richard Mille and the polished gold of a presidential Rolex, with the central idea of the juxtaposition being to highlight how the wealth that the two of them have accumulated has come at a cost. People's lives, dead junkies, and families, and just all the violence that this lifestyle brings. Millions trapped between skeletons is a clever reference to the watch, but also the album cover, which evokes the skeletonized design. The darker meaning here is obviously the cost we mentioned, the cost of life, the skeletons. Here we get another Coke bar with the reference to Snow, as well as The Revenant, a movie which has Leonardo DiCaprio literally fighting for his life, trying to survive the cold of the American wilderness. This also ties into the larger motif here, established with the tombstones in the desert. The sparse, haunting production. I think the visuals that Malice is conjuring here are meant to be biblical. He is this lone spirit who was lost in the wilderness, but found God in his suffering, and now has been transfigured into the spiritually inspired entity tasked with leading his enemy to the same fate of wandering in the wilderness. The main difference is, as he highlights, his opponent will not survive. By the way, a revenant is also a vengeful spirit, and with Malice returning to mainstream rap after so long, and the imagery he's already established makes this shit really fucking scary. Malice contrasts his opponent's failure to survive this environment with his own survival and success, which he reinforces through the next line, which continues the snow motif with the striking verb shoveling, evoking the enormous amounts of coke he has sold through telling lower level dealers and pushers to keep moving it. The distance that Malice creates between himself as the kingpin and the lower level dealers, as well as the snow image generally, emphasizes that Malice is on top of the hierarchy, symbolized by the snow on a mountain. Keep this mountain image in mind as it recurs throughout the album. On POV, Pusha mentions the kilos of coke that he has in his Maybach before outlining the specifics of him meeting his long-haired business associate. Coke supply chain stuff, you know? The 6 mil behind Tyvek line is a reference to how empty houses are used for drug operations. Tyvek is a kind of house wrap used in construction. And if you want to make sure people don't barge into the trap house, wrapping it up to make it look like the construction of it is still in progress and is unsafe for someone to enter is a good way of keeping your ongoings low-key. It's kind of funny though, because you can literally buy 6mm Tyvek, but Push has made 6 million through Tyvek, through the trap houses, 6 mil versus 6 mil. And when Push is talking about creating content, he's talking about this album, but you know, he's also talking about selling coke. In Push's verse, he name drops a Supreme Team, a crime syndicate from New York known for smuggling narcotics, and Willie Falcone, who is a convicted drug lord. Pusha asserts that his status as kingpin is comparable to both. We'll just have to wait for the smoke to clear. Sorry, powder, you know, like coke powder, but there's so much coke, it's like creating clouds of coke. I don't know. The talcum here is also coke. Talcum is basically a baby powder, but the trunk full of talcum is a fun double entendre that could refer to Pusha smuggling coke in his vehicle, but a trunk could also refer to a nose. Trunk full of talcum, nose full of coke, you get it. And the ghost face with the wrist is a nod to this insane gold eagle cuff that Ghostface Killer has, but wrist refers to cooking dope over the stove and packaging it to be sold, which explains the bird falconer line. In much the same way a falconer trains their bird, a pusher is an accomplished drug dealer who sends his birds out to be sold. Birds are bricks made of coke, in case you forgot. Like, he's sending the coke out to be sold like a falconer sends their bird out. How does he even come up with this shit, dude? Remember when I told you to keep that mountain motif in mind? Well, that's because in this line, a pusher is mentioning how during American winters, he heads down to catch the South American summer up in the Andes Mountain. And yes, he's also there to meet a connect and probably to a plan for more coke to be moved over the border. Tyler steals the show on this song. I love this line here comparing Dirty White fans moshing to the movement of cocaine. Dirty White, it's already iconic. And Malice has a verse that's full of coke lines, so let's get into it. The operation being obese is a clever way of indicating the sheer enormity of their drug dealing, while also acting as a nod to how cocaine is literally weighed out on scales. We'll get into the specific quantities that you can buy coke in a little later, you know, the grams, ounces, eighths, kilos, etc. Clipse have it all on this album for you guys. The next line is a reference to mixing dope on the stove, with Malice referencing the mixed-raced athlete Patrick Mahomes, who is known for his deep attacks, or bombs, on the field. I don't know shit about football, I just read that online. Feel free to correct me in the comments. When Malice tells his guys to go deep though, it means he's giving them drugs and telling them to cover as much territory as possible, perhaps even covering enemy territory. Malice building a rap career off an OZ or an ounce of coke is contrasted with the next line where younger cats in the game simply OD. He's a dealer and they're a user. Or in a rap sense, he's an artist and they're a trend hopper. It also ties into the life and death theme that we discussed on Chains and Whips. The next line is a reference to the novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where the protagonist, the mild-mannered Dr. Jekyll, concocts a substance that transforms him into a darker version of himself, Mr. Hyde. It's some classic literature. You should read that shit if you haven't already. It's also a clever reference, as Jekyll in the book produces an illicit substance, just like Malice does. On So Be It, Pusha kicks things off by spelling out Clipse's name, followed by Pharrell's initial, and then name drops both Clipse's and Pharrell's main product line, with Pharrell's being LV, Louis Vuitton, and Clipse's being cocaine. An 8-ball is an eighth of an ounce of cocaine. The juxtaposition between the luxury brand and the blow is kind of what Clipse is all about, a polished, high-quality bars and production with street subject matter. Pusha invites his ops to a lesson where he can show them how to bust a brick. In other words, break up the kilo of coke into smaller portions like ounces and 8-balls. In the next line, the phrase "I monogram" is referencing the Louis Vuitton design, the monogram, but it also refers to how Pusha threatens to shoot his competition with an automatic weapon. Think do like West Side Gun or something like that. But I also don't think it's an accident that "I monogram" sounds like "I'm on a gram," like a gram of coke. Or Instagram, this line has like 8 meanings, so I'm gonna leave it there. One of the meanings is a gram of coke. That's the part I care about. Yeti in the next line is also coke. Yeti, abominable snowman, yeah. This next line is pretty clever, as it could be addressed either towards Pusha's competition or his enemy's girl that he's trying to romance up. Kelly is a white girl's name, so he could be saying, "Come back, darling, I've got more coke for you." But it could also be referring to an automatic weapon, like machine gun Kelly. It took me so long to figure that one out, but it just kind of dropped on me this morning. That's what's so great about Clipse, man. Like, you think you know what they're saying, and then something just clicks, and you're like, oh. And we can't forget about the ski ad-lib. Skiing, snow, yeah, you get the picture. Malice reminds us on the song of their blow money. In other words, money from selling coke, comparing it with the money that his ops owe. The internal rhyme kind of reinforces the contrast. However, blow could also mean waste. In other words, the opponents have blown all their cash and are now in debt. So then both parts of this line could apply to the opponent, who here is either Jim Jones or Travis Scott, but it could actually be loads of rich people because they're all very good at wasting their money and getting into debt. And the word choice of balanced is a nod to scales that you weigh your product on, because one coke innuendo per line was not enough for Malice. In the next line, Malice berates his competition by using the term bird talk, which normally refers to gossip, but Malice is obviously playing with double meanings here, as he also means drug talk, or people that talk a big game about the drugs that they push. At the end of the verse, Malice rhymes ski up and re-up to portray how his product is so good that first-time users will inevitably return or re-up in order to get more coke from him specifically. They really make their coke sound pretty great. It almost makes you want to try some. He then refers to how middlemen in drug operations often end up taking the fall if things go south, while kingpins like Malice or Push are protected. It's very reminiscent of the classic big pun verse about middlemen in Little Italy riddled with holes, or however it goes. I've never learned the whole thing. On the following track, Ace Trumpet, the chorus features a snow globe, which is a symbol for Push's drug empire and how his wealth and power have awarded him the level of control he now has. But snow obviously referring to cocaine. It might also be a nod to Citizen Kane. Wait, Citizen Kane, cocaine? The ballerinas are definitely an allusion to Runaway, which Pusha himself featured on. Notice the inversion of the black and white between Kanye and Pusha's ballerinas. Definitely intentional. But then at the end of the chorus, he inverts the idea of drug money through the phrase dough blow. A blow dough would be the money you get from selling drugs. Dough blow is what you get when you want to spend that money. You get that? In his verse, Push compares his careful treatment of his product with white glove service, which is often reserved for luxury vehicles. He then compares himself with Luigi from Mario, a game where literal bricks, not Coke bricks, feature quite heavily. In verse 2, Malice describes another visit to South America, and considering the inclusion of the guns or choppers, he's definitely there for more than just the scenery. He describes his loss of innocence from selling drugs by referencing a popular Nirvana song before comparing himself to the mythical Arabian criminal Ali Baba, King of Thieves, which goes hand in hand with the rest of the album's mythological imagery. Keep an ear out for other mythical or historical figures as we move on. And the band name Nirvana is actually taken from a Hindu concept that's kind of synonymous with heaven as we understand it. So he's also flexing on his closeness with the Lord. And also, Alibaba happens to be the name of a Chinese multinational tech company. Malice is probably using them to convey the enormous scale of his drug operation. This right here is probably my favorite Coke line on the album. Lady Gaga is obviously a white woman, so there's another Coke metaphor. But to add more layers, Lady Gaga actually starred in the movie House of Gucci. I'm starting to think Malice just really likes movies. All things considered gives us a little break, as the only pushover about Coke is this line where he emphasizes the unity between him and his brother, while also referencing their ability to sell Coke so prolifically and still manage to not get caught. It's like they have a cocaine brotherhood. It's kind of badass. On verse 2, Malice gives the words snow a break, opting for blizzard instead, which is basically just a shitload of snow now that I think about it. It's also a fun inversion, as you generally expect the blizzard to be outside the car, not inside the car. And then later in the verse, we get some math Coke lines, which is pretty cool. I kind of suck at math, but I'll do my best to explain this. So in a traditional sense, splitting the pie refers to the income or profits for something being split among members, with the long division implying that there is a shitload of money for them to split. Except a pie is also slang for a brick of Coke. So you could interpret this as him and his crew breaking up a brick into smaller portions. But then we have the mathematical terminology here with the circle, pi, and long division being math terms. Incidentally, pi is an irrational number, meaning that it has an infinite number of decimal points. This is basically saying he has made an unfathomable amount of money from the Coke he has sold. Using an irrational number to convey how much Coke you're selling is pretty big brain. And then we have the mention of Pyrex in the outro, which is a kind of glass that is extremely heat resistant, making it perfect to cook dope in. The next track, Mike Tyson Blow to the Face, is mostly just Coke references. In verse 1, Pusha mentions being key deep, in other words, kilograms deep in Coke. A key is slang for kilo. He reinforces the abundance of Coke by mentioning being able to fill up an entire mobile home with Coke. The use of the term snow connects to the previous line, fronted for the summer. He's basically saying that he can create an entire cold front of snow, Coke, even in the summer. Okay, this one is subtle, but it's quite important to the narrative of the album. In other parts of the project, you'll hear Push and Malice mention how they used to be out in the streets selling Coke themselves. However, as they expanded their operations and established themselves as kingpins, they've been able to create distance between them at the top of the operation and the on-the-ground operation. And this difference in hierarchy is why we see that mountain motif throughout the album. These Rolls Royces at Pusha's gate demonstrate this, as smugglers, middlemen, connects, etc. now come to his gate, showing how he's been able to buy convenience and that aforementioned distance from the power and wealth he's acquired. Okay, back to the Coke lines. Let's talk about the Mike Tyson blow to the face line. Pusha bends the meaning of blow to either mean a punch or a line of Coke, which can feel like a punch if you're doing a fat bump or a chunky line. Mike Tyson is obviously a boxer who has landed many blows himself, but he's also known to have done loads of Coke in the 90s. Pusha is basically saying that the girl he's with wants to do as much blow as Mike Tyson used to. I think this is a good point for me to just say, guys, as a teacher, don't do drugs. I've taught students who were dosed up, brother, Drugs can mess you up, man, especially your wallet. Shit is expensive. This Bezos line can join Lady Gaga and Luigi as being some of the funniest coke lines on the album. Push probably pays his guys better than Bezos does though, so I guess it's a bit of an unfair comparison. The slalom ice in the chorus is a really silly hyperbole. Normally coke is done in keys, bumps, or lines, but the lady Push is with wants to do a slalom course of coke, which is like a fucking winding path of coke through obstacles. It's an insane visual. The half price for the crates of blow is talking about a bulk discount. The idea is that if you're going to buy an entire crate of coke, then you're going to pay less per gram. The flow to the nose here refers to the ingestion of coke through your nose, but is also a cheeky reference to Push's rap career, like his rap flow. This is one of many double entendres that blur the lines between the two products that Push and Malice have moved. Music and dope. In Malice's verse, he says selling dope is a religion, which is that's not okay. The hammer in the next line is a double entendre. A hammer could be a gun that's presently aimed at your opponent, but a hammer is also a kind of pipe used to smoke dope. The fact that the beat drops at the very next line makes this moment even better. The 300 bricks is a funny reference to the 300 Spartans who fought the Persian army, but of course it's Clipse. So Leonidas is also a reference to a drug lord, Leonidas of Vargas, who was part of the Medellin cartel. A cartel, if you didn't know, is basically a group of high-ranking dealers conspiring in order to manage the trade in a specific region or territory. In this line, Malice's old plug is Pharrell, who along with Chad to form the Neptunes, hooked Clipse up with their signature weird, banging production. But the new plug is God, who Malice obviously developed a deeper relationship with following Clipse breaking up. Malice is basically saying that Pharrell asked God to bring Clipse back together, but he's using the word plug as in a supplier. The OG of pushing coke and wordplay in rap is obviously Jay-Z, who released his debut album, Reasonable Doubt, in 1996. A bass-heavy, banger-laden classic that was a runaway success. It's also a particular favorite for hustlers, criminals, and people involved in street culture. If you read the lyrics, they're filled with references to selling drugs. Malice is basically saying that his music and his coke is of the quality and quantity of Jay-Z's coke and music in the 90s. Such a fucking hard line, man. In the next track, Ibida, a pusher basically outlines a drug smuggling operation across state borders. Someone is sending for his dope, which he once again characterizes through the word pie with the word gordo, which just means fat in Spanish, indicating that these are some pretty chunky chickens being moved. A push takes time to critique the border control, which he easily gets through, and then compares himself to yet another drug lord, this time Amado Carrillo Fuenteso, aka Lord of the Skies. In the chorus, the bitches in the back is probably referring to coke, white woman. But the following mention of the competition not being able to breathe up there with the steep enough mention kind of carries that mountain motif that we mentioned earlier. A push is above his competition, figuratively in terms of being better than them, but also literally, as when he goes to South America to smuggle drugs, he's literally at a higher altitude than them. The mountain motif is actually a reflection of the supply chain across the American continents. Crazy shit, man. And then we get the scale motif again, which is another device Clipse use to reinforce the idea of being above their competition. Think of the visual of the scales of justice, where one side is higher than another. And in case you forgot, a scale is used to weigh coke. In verse 3, Malice and Push trade bars by outlining some specifics regarding the drug operation. And in case you were getting bored with drugs just being smuggled in cars, we've got drugs coming in by boat. And different types of drugs. The face numbers are the coke users, like the Weeknd song. whereas the nodders are those on opioids or drugs that have strong dissociative effects, which may cause the user to nod or shake their head. The Contras were a group of militia in the 1980s in Nicaragua who were funded by the US government, the usual American foreign politics bullshit. But in case you didn't know, they're actually one of the main sources of the cocaine influx in the States in the 80s. Thanks, Reagan. Lifting all this weight is an obvious reference to loads of cocaine, with the mention of now living behind a gate calling back the white back-to-back Rolls Royces from earlier. When you're a kingpin, people come to you. You don't have to drive out to them. This line is pretty funny as it compares digging through a crate of coke to how DJs dig through their crates to look for records to play or sample. Okay, we have some repeating concepts here, so let's have a lightning round. We have another line about breaking up a kilo into smaller portions, and another line about the making of the actual dope, and another pretty fun line that builds on the comparison between dealer and DJ by comparing rapping lyrics with wrapping drugs. Generally, you will wrap up a brick of coke to keep it firm and waterproof. Let's actually pull up that bird picture from earlier. You see the tape? Tape could also refer to the tape that studios used to record music onto, which ties back to the DJ line. This next line reinforces the idea of demand outstripping supply, as they are making so much money they literally can't fit it all into the safe. Okay, onto my personal favorite song off this album, F.I.C.O, which has another onslaught of coke metaphors. In the first verse, a pusher details the early days of his drug dealing, where he would have to wait in dirty apartment blocks to sell to users directly. Here we get the simile of lipo, as in liposuction, where excess fat is removed from an obese person's body. Moving weight, moving coke, you get the idea. But the cosmetic surgery motif actually carries on to the next song, so keep an eye out for that when we get there. And the lipo mention is definitely a Drake diss, as you probably remember Kendrick jabbing Drake for getting a tummy tuck in Euphoria. But the other reason I say this is because in this line, you could interpret it as referencing Drake's artistic stagnation. The word rut is also the word you use for when an animal is in mating season. Drake is stuck in a rut because of his constant hypersexual and predatory behavior, as Kendrick highlighted on Meet the Grahams. I'm very sorry, but the video corrupted. I have the script, so the rest of the video is gonna come soon. Please subscribe to make sure that you don't miss it. I'm having loads of fun making this video. And if you're watching this, it means you've made it through, so you've had a fun time as well. So stay subscribed so that you don't miss out on that. And thanks for watching so far, man. Cheers, guys. Catch you soon.